Hi guys, I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to another Just Music podcast. I'm super excited for this week because I had the opportunity to sit down with Lillian Werbin, one of the co-owners of Elderly Instruments located right here in Lansing, Michigan. Now if you're unfamiliar with Elderly Instruments, they are a huge music store that sells internationally, locally, and has all of these cool different events that they put on. They work with all these big companies in the music industry. It's super cool and I hope you enjoy, and Lilli now joins in progress. Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Just Music podcast. I'm super excited about this week because we have an awesome special guest, Miss Lillian Werbin. She is one of the owners of Elderly Instruments based right in Lansing, Michigan, conveniently right in Old Town. Now, for those of you who are listening, maybe not as familiar with Elderly, Elderly is kind of a staple name in the mid-Michigan area for all kinds of stringed and fretted instruments. It's an awesome place. I've been going there ever since I've been a little kid and ever since I've been exposed to music. So I'm super honored to invite Lilli onto the program. Welcome, Lilli.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
So I have a list of questions that I'm going to try to get to through as much time as we have here. So we just trying to go right through the line. So as far as like Elderly, I know you work it with your parents, so you guys kind of all have co-ownership. So can you talk about how Elderly's like inception kind of began and like the backstory?
Yeah. So my dad is one of the original founders, owners, and obviously still is around.
Right.
So in 1972, he already had acquired some vintage instruments with his at the time partner, and they were acquiring too many, and they were growing their customer base. And an opportunity arose in East Lansing to rent a little basement size, 10 by 12 foot store kind of thing, and it just kind of snowballed from there. So the dream was to have a music store that felt like a living room, and here we are, still with the dream. So
it's definitely that way, because I know, and I know probably a lot of other musicians have experienced it, where you may go to another music store and you feel uncomfortable taking an instrument off the wall because you feel like someone's looking over your shoulder, like, and especially like for younger musicians, sometimes I would come in there and I'd feel very intimidated at these places where they're like, why are you picking up these guitars? And at Elderly, it's not like that at all. You can just go in there and pick up anything, and everyone's more than willing to help and answer questions, and it really does feel like that family atmosphere.
We appreciate it because obviously our job is to maintain the inventory, right?
Right.
But we have a repair shop on site. Right. So if something gets a ding, it's a significantly smaller issue for us.
Right.
But it's all about musicians feeling the instrument. How do you know you want to play this guitar for the next 15, 20 years if you haven't felt it in your hands?
Right.
And I mean, like, bringing that to people via the website has been a learning curve over the last 10 years. But we do in-hand descriptions. We'll play it for people over the phone, or we'll send a video personalized to you, kind of thing. So we are certainly focused on maintaining the living room or hands-on experience. The 21st century is proving to be a little difficult, but we'll make it work.
It's this is a good segue or a good transition, but I wanted to know, what's so cool about the atmosphere too is you guys host like jam sessions and concerts. So I have definitely walked in, and it was an unexpected thing where all of a sudden I came in and there's just like a huge, like 30 people in a circle, just all have guitars and mandolins and violins, and they're all having like bluegrass jams and stuff. It's super cool.
Awesome.
Even if you're not, a musician, or if you're just somebody that appreciates music and arts, it's just cool that Elderly is so welcoming for those people to just come in there and kind of witness that firsthand.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's how my organic love for like the business and this industry kind of developed, is growing up in jam sessions. And, I would go to a concert with my parents, and normally concerts end and everybody goes home.
Right.
No. when concerts end, then it's time to like, oh, now we're going to play some fun stuff. Now we're going to play the things that like make us feel good as musicians, not necessarily the audience feel good.
Right.
Which is all important, but we'd like to facilitate all of it if we
Right.
could.
Exactly. So I know that you mentioned that like with your customer base, so you do a lot of online activity, and I'm assuming that's obviously very prevalent now, considering the virus and all the issues that are going on globally. So how is that, going? And I know you said that you've been doing a lot of work about this. You said you're doing the work of about equivalent of like 30 people.
Yeah, I have a whole new understanding for the back end that I fearlessly lead, but it's interesting to actually put my hands back where I started. So when I started at Elderly, I was an order picker. I worked part-time and I commuted from Kalamazoo, and my dad was very clear that if I was wasting time, I was not welcome. So his exact words were, "You will not be an extra body." I heard that. I said, okay. But that's kind of where I found out we sell, railway spikes or violin rosin. I mean, like, obviously we're known for the instruments, but what I then found out when I started was that we're all about maintaining the instruments, which maintains the culture. It's one thing to collect instruments. It's another thing to care for them. It's one thing to build instruments. It's another thing to sell them. And we've kind of married all of it in the back end. And so bringing that onto the website, we can't expect customers to page through every single string or every single pick. And that is a difficulty. We had a 100-some page catalog that we sent out for 20 years, and that was closer to our entire inventory than what one homepage could do. So navigating the online world during a pandemic, luckily we were kind of already thinking about some of these things, but to be forced to do them actively and maintain the public eye without asking people to spend money. We're in this delicate people run business. Our business is nothing without people. And so my focus, my dad's focus, is to make sure that not only our customers understand that we're still here to help, but we're not going to put our employees at risk to do so.
For sure.
So I have sales guys working from home, and our purchasers are working from home. Obviously, marketing is. And then I'm going in and picking a lot of the orders, most of them. We kind of have a, supply line, chain. So we'll pick the orders, and then a repairman will come in and set them all up, and then we have somebody else come in and pack them. So we're maintaining super distance. And we're trying to keep up with orders so that people at home are entertained at home and don't want to leave. We want to make sure people stay with us, but we certainly want to make sure safety's first. So well, pandemic work.
Yeah, I'm glad to know that everyone's keeping busy, though. I know it's unfortunately, because of this whole issue, I know a lot of things have just almost kind of ceased to exist for a moment until we get the clear to kind of reopen. But it's awesome that you're still keeping busy. It's not a vacation for you by any means.
No, I don't think I have had a day off since the shutdown.
Wow.
And it's not, I certainly don't want to sound like I'm complaining, because I'm grateful for being able to work.
Sure.
And I'm grateful to be able to provide for not only my employees, but for our customers. But I hope this is staying home. Stay home.
Wash your hands.
Please stay home. There are a lot of small business owners like myself who are doing exactly what I'm doing. They're processing as much as they can so that they can maintain their business without dropping their service. It's a delicate world, but we're not in it alone, which is almost comforting.
It's kind of like it's kind of nice to know that you know, it's not just this one set state or one set area of the world that's
Yeah.
only dealing with it. We're kind of all like collectively
Oh
in it
yeah.
together, which is it's nice to know, even though there's some people that are not doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. But anyway, I don't want to talk too political, but so I'm glad to know that technology is a super good positive in keeping the business good. But
Yeah.
this kind of transitions me into this next point. So what's really cool about Elderly, for those of you that don't know, is they first began with dealing with primarily the name Elderly comes from, you know, valuable instruments and old aged instruments, but you also obviously do a lot of newer instruments too,
Oh yeah.
and working with companies. So I know that in the past you've worked with like Martin guitars and you've worked with Farida guitars. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because that's super, super cool.
Man, it's interesting seeing how the other vendors are handling this,
Mm-hmm.
right? So before Michigan shut down, we were hearing reports of companies in California and New Mexico and places where we get a lot of product from, and they
Right.
were like, "Yeah, we're shut down. We can't send you anything else. We'll see you when this is all over."
Right.
Okay. And then there are some companies who, kind of like ourselves, are maintaining social distancing and 5 people or less in the building, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Martin Guitars, they are closed for right now. They're not shipping anything. They are not in the building. But I don't know if you know this, we're having a Martin Guitar string sale right now. So because it was already on the books.
Okay.
And so, you know, retailers like myself are going to try to navigate the pandemic so that when people are back in the market, those names haven't diminished or disappeared.
Right.
You know, same with Farida. Those instruments are made in China, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so in speaking with them, they're fine, they're safe and healthy, but you know, there's big changes happening in the infrastructure.
Right.
And so in how we handle overseas interactions, we're just patient.
Yeah.
We can't dictate a thing, you know.
Right.
So we're just kind of being patient and waiting to see when product can move. We're fairly stocked. We're still receiving shipments that were sent prior.
Okay.
So that was my first 2 weeks after the shutdown. I received things. So when it comes to like the industry's communication and how we do business,
mm-hmm.
while it feels on hold, the communication hasn't stopped, the planning hasn't stopped.
Sure.
So I anticipate when this lifts, I don't think it'll be over, but when it lifts,
right.
It won't be business as usual, but we've already thought about, okay, how do we do business now?
Right.
Because we're in a hands-on world, and
right.
we all, you know, string manufacturers, guitar manufacturers, retailers, we all have to navigate it carefully.
Sure.
So
yeah, I mean, I think that's something really something notable to know, because I think beyond just Elderly, just like manufacturers in general, like, you know, a lot of the times, you know, you're thinking like when you're going to purchase an instrument or some type of gear, you know, a lot of the times in this type of field, you want to test it out beforehand before you know, pull the trigger on something. But that's still awesome that you guys are still you know, keeping on top of things. I know you guys are really, really strong on like Instagram and YouTube, and I love watching all of that, like in the shop with Joe Conkley and all that stuff.
Well, and that's the other thing is like we're getting creative with doing in the shop from their home shops.
Yes. Yeah.
And obviously, like I said earlier, we have to maintain the inventory.
Right.
So we have people checking in on the humidity levels, making sure that the roof hasn't caved in. And when we're doing that, we can shoot a couple hands-on descriptions, send you your video, you know. There's a way to do the work and maintain safety. So if anyone's looking for a new instrument, I'll get you that hands-on description and make sure it's the one for you.
Awesome. So I want to talk specifically about you and kind of your role in the company. And I know that when we talked beforehand, we talked about how you're really big into kind of being an event coordinator and kind of planning these things. So I wanted you to kind of talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, I'm a big bridge builder. I like gaps and I like eliminating them. So kind of when it comes to elderly, I try to keep my view, 50,000 feet up so that everybody else can focus on the ground level stuff.
Right.
But that allows me to see sometimes too much. I like to zero in on the details and figure out, okay, well, if customers are looking for this, how do we make that happen? Or that's a hassle for my employee. How do I eliminate that? When it comes to event planning, I'm currently still planning a African American roots music festival in Texas.
Oh, cool.
Elderly is still a sponsor as long as things go well, but that's the kind of thing where it's a states away,
Right.
But I like coordinating, artist engagement. I like coordinating city and local government with musicians and local artists.
Right.
And in doing that, we get to connect with more musicians for things like Midwest Banjo Camp, Midwest Ukulele Camp, which I also help with. I'm the site coordinator for Banjo Camp, and I do the rooming assignments only for U Camp. But like I said, I like the little pieces. I like to move them around. I'm a big fan of merging communities, and I think in times like this, where so many festivals have been canceled, so many musicians are displaced because their gigs, their lineup is diminished.
Right.
So it's gonna take merging of communities to make sure that all of these people find solid footing. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So when it comes to the festival in Texas, we've been talking about, well, what does it look like if we cancel? What happens to the funds that we were promised to those artists? Is there a way to change it to a virtual festival? Is there time? And so those are the questions that are always mulling around nowadays, because there will be a new normal, and as people like me try to bring people together, we need to be cognizant of how that new normal affects people. Because some people, whether we're all able to go outside, there are going to be a large percentage of people who aren't comfortable or have an inability to do that,
Right.
So it's the virtual marathon. We got to figure out how to get it done, but the communities can't disappear just because we're all inside.
Right. It's just, I mean, I know it's hard to say this was a good thing that happened, but I just want to make the point that it's a good thing that it happened in a world now where we are so more connected versus if we were in a time where, computers were not as prevalent as they are now, or just, the smart technology. But so what's really interesting is I know that you do all these different camps and all these different things. So the ukulele camp is usually held in Olivet, Michigan.
Yep.
And what's really interesting is I did my undergrad at Olivet in classical guitar. So I had to tell you this story. So I can't even remember, I'm not sure when it was, but I remember I was coming out of class or leaving class or whenever it was, and I was walking through town, and then I remember I just saw an elderly, I can't even remember if it was a flag or something that said elderly instruments, and I was like, wait, what is going on? And so then I was like, wait, is that the elderly instruments? And then sure enough it was, and I saw all these uke players and just all these different people, and I was like, whoa, right in Olivet. And Olivet, for maybe people that don't know, is a really, really small community. I mean, there's not even a stoplight.
Yeah, it's a one street and you are through the town.
Yes, I just wanted to bring that up. That was super cool because I was like one of those things where it's like, oh, Elderly's right here, and it was unexpected. It was cool.
It's funny. We do that pop-up store
Mm-hmm.
at Banjo Camp and Ute Camp.
Mm-hmm.
So Banjo Camp, Olivet, the small town, is overrun by banjos and mandolins, and it is one hootin' time. And then Ukulele Camp, which is 2 weeks later,
Mm-hmm.
is a whole new part of
Right,
our
right.
world. But it's fun for elderly to be kind of involved in those things, you know.
Right.
Be hands-on with our customers and our friends, our family members who are out in the world. So
And it's so interesting to me too, because like when I look at your guys' Facebook page, or like you guys will post these interactive comments, and when I say that Elderly is not just local in Michigan, I mean it is global. I mean there are so many people from all over the world, all kinds of life, that comment on these posts, and I just think that's so cool that right here in my hometown, right in little old Lansing, Michigan, there's this huge staple of music that reaches across literally the entire world, and it's
oh
just
yeah,
so cool. I love seeing
thank
those
you.
comments.
Thank
Yeah.
you. It's funny. That's the one part of the pandemic that is really difficult. We can't ship internationally right now.
Oh yeah.
And that's hard. That's hard. We really pride ourselves in being able to supply people worldwide.
Right.
So we're just keeping those orders in a pile. We will get them out eventually, but right now we do most of the communication with the various governments around the world so that we can make sure goods can get through customs.
Right.
And there's no way right now.
Right.
So we're just, but I'm glad you mentioned everybody worldwide because we love them.
I know it's just I love seeing that because it's just like it's so beyond just the Michigan family of musicians.
Oh, yeah.
It's global. So a while ago, this was several years ago, I saw a little documentary on Elderly, and I think it was put on by WKAR, I think.
All Things Strings.
Yes, and so this leads me into my next question. So at Elderly, I know you have had some of the biggest icons in music come in and purchase instruments. And so I just want to ask, can you just do some name drops of some of the biggest?
I don't know that I could name drop without like going through our list.
There's a list.
I mean, we have our customers on a list. So Joe Schmo is going to be right next to the drummer or the guitarist of such and such. But I personally don't like to highlight the celebrities because they get a little quiet time. They deserve privacy too. But
no, I understand that. I respect.
But
that.
I also like to stress that like while we can supply a celebrity with the multi-million-dollar instrument of their dreams, obviously not that much, but we're much more about the lifetime of that instrument in someone's hands. So I'm talking to like the novice guitarists, the people who have really wanted to try that ukulele and haven't bitten the bullet yet, because I want to see them in 20 years. Right. I want to hear when they're upgrading again,
right.
I want to sell their first instrument in 30 years right. when they're tired of it and they're ready to consign it with me. It's so much more about the lifetime than those one-offs that right. That come through the door. But I also hear about the big names much after the fact. We don't tend to make a big deal.
I just know, like for me, I mean, like if I was to be working in the shop, and I imagine like for your employees, you have to obviously treat them just like they're human and a customer, just like everybody else, but just the overwhelming like joy of just being like, oh my God, that is my musician hero,
Well, what's funny is our employees have very different musical tastes.
Right.
So an A-list celebrity from a certain genre might not be recognized by some of these guys over here, Right. So we've had it where celebrities will come through and no one will know to treat them as such until it's way too late.
Right. Then they sign the receipt and they're like, wait, you're that person?
That, or we'll get like a manager like, hey, my guy was in here the other day and I'm ready to purchase that instrument for him. And they're like, who?
Yeah, I didn't
So,
know.
yeah.
Well, that's awesome to know though that you're still, obviously respecting everybody as if they are just in there as a customer. And I
Yeah.
would imagine just like people who are really big like that, they probably get bombarded all the time by publicity and stuff. So to treat them as a normal person as they are is respectable.
Yeah.
So this leads me to another question. So obviously Elderly has had so many instruments come in and out of the door. Can you name like one time where there was an instrument where it was just like, wow, that is literally a piece of history and that is so unique, and I'm so thankful that it came through our doors?
Well, so we get a lot of the cool stuff and the oddball and one-offs.
Right.
A couple months ago, we got the only, I hope I don't misquote ourselves, Lord. We got the only lefty D28, no, D18.
Okay.
I think it was a D18. Ooh, but no one roast me for not knowing.
Fact checks.
But it's the only pre-war lefty that Martin made of that type of instrument.
Right.
And it was made from a musician who played all over the place. The family member that brought us the instrument had a booklet of all the photos and all of these newspaper clippings and things. It was really, really cool.
Wow.
And so we made sure to highlight that and give a lot of attention to it. And so there are videos somewhere and pictures.
Now, does your like when your team goes through and like looks at this instrument, or they're appraising it, or they're doing any type of work on it, do any of them? I mean, I know you have to treat every instrument like it's an instrument, but it would just be, for me, and I don't really work on instruments. I'm more just on the playing aspect of it. But I would be so overwhelmed if let's just say like Willie Nelson's guitar sat on my bench or whatever, and it's like, whoa, like I gotta be careful.
I mean, that's kind of. It's funny. I've never thought about that. I trust our repairmen and our appraisers pretty severely. And so every instrument has its little lifetime through Elderly before it hits the floor.
Right.
So an instrument will come in, our appraisers will look at it, our repair shop will look at it, it gets described, it gets photographed, and then it gets put on the website, and then we'll do marketing for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that instrument goes through quite a few hands.
Right.
And everybody has to feel confident that they know how to handle a guitar.
Right.
And that's kind of the Elderly way, is if you're not sure, don't.
Don't.
We'll wait. We'll back up. We'll get some more info. But those kinds of one-off instruments, or like the high dollar instruments, because we sell on consignment, some of those things, while they're not owned by us, we still treat them like ours. Right. So everything gets the same quality. Mm-hmm. But things like that lefty go through more hands. More people are interested. They want to see it a couple times that week, before moving on to whatever else is in the building.
Especially like that, because left-handed guitars, I mean, they're very, I mean, they're not, and they're more in music now, they're more accessible, but especially back then, to find a left-handed guitar is super
it was a
rare.
Custom.
Oh, well,
that's kind of, if you find a lefty in a certain period of time, it's a custom no matter what.
Right.
And that's why you hear of so many old-time, not the genre, but old-time musicians playing right-handed when they're left-handed in their day-to-day.
Right.
So again, with technology, we've learned how to flip the instrument around and build it so that everybody can play. Right.
That's awesome. Okay, so I have just a couple more questions here because I don't want to waste too much more of your time, and this is just super awesome. I love this. I know with everything being canceled, are there any future projects that or events that Elderly is working on? I know you mentioned some of the stuff that you're going to be doing down in Texas with them sponsoring it, but is there anything in the future, or anything that they're trying to maybe see if they can do? I know it's kind of gray area right now.
We participate in quite a few networking events in the fall. I'm on the planning committee for Banjo Gathering, which used to be the Banjo Collectors Gathering. And that's surrounding history, scholarly writing, kind of studying the banjo as like a tool and a community tool, not necessarily just an instrument.
Sure.
And so with events like that, it's, while elderly isn't like a part of planning, I am. And so we always bring our own little collection of banjos to show off, of course.
Right.
But traveling is a scary thought coming up.
Right.
There's the International Bluegrass Music Association. They do their event in September, and I was recently added to a Bluegrass Pride board that's closely affiliated, and so it's I am just waiting to see. Elderly will support any of these organizations as the organizations see fit. Until then, we kind of all are just in this boat of waiting to see what goes on next.
Sure.
But what I do know is elderly is determined to be around to support musicians as they come out of this dark time.
Right. Okay, this is a good transition. So if I could ask one more question, what would be, your kind of lasting wise words of wisdom, or, just kind of encouragement for everybody to kind of just, hang in there and, stay tight. We're going to get through this.
I am as scared as the next person, right? But ultimately, life is what we're focused on,
Right.
To focus on the impending doom is a dangerous mindset.
Right.
So when I get low, I focus on listening to some good music. I call my friends, I call my mom. My wish is that everybody maintains some semblance of hope. I think that musicians are easier affected by world events like this, and I hope everyone is being good to themselves. And if you need help, reach out for it. Don't be prideful. Now is not the time.
Right. Well, that is absolutely very, very beautiful advice. I want to thank Lilli Werbin for being on the Just Music podcast. I'm so excited that you, wanted to talk about, elderly and how everything's doing. And thank you a lot. I really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. I had a great time.
All right. Take care now. Be safe.
You too.
All right, guys, that was the video. Thanks for sticking around. I'll have all of Elderly's links in the description, and you guys should really give them a check out. I really enjoyed talking to Lilli. She's a beautiful, great person, and it was a lot of fun. Take care, guys, and stay safe.